So this is the last panel that I made, and I'm not going to know if this fits quite right until I cut some of the floor out under here to remove this shape right here, because right now my shape is being held up by this part. So I'm pretty anxious to move on to the next panel though. So this panel is close enough for now, but I do plan on having to adjust it a little bit before I install it. The next panel I'm going to make is the end of the seat platform. It's completely gone in this area. It's starting to deteriorate and rust in this area. From about here inward is not in bad shape. The upper level of the seat platform steps down about 3/4 of an inch onto this lower section here. And right where this radius is, I believe I'm going to go ahead and replace all the way back to this transition point where the upper level steps down onto the lower level. There is a bracket under the floor that reinforces these 4 mounting points for the seat, the track that the seat slides on, and this area here is spot welded to that bracket. The bracket is connected from this floor brace back to this floor brace. So I don't have much to go on as far as the shape of what's going on in this area here, but I do see on the front floor brace there's a spot weld here, but there's nothing here, and there's a spot weld here, but nothing here, and I see there's a little gap right here, so the floor pan isn't down tight against the floor brace right here. Same on the back side. There's no spot welds here or here, but there's a spot weld here and here. So those are going to be my fastening points to the floor braces. So the sheet metal needs to roll down here and then roll outward, and then it looks like it's going to roll down again, and then it's going to continue outward on top of the inner rocker panel, and then 90 degrees up to a flange that'll get spot welded right here to the outer rocker panel. So I need to get this profile right here so I get an idea on what this shape of the panel in this area should look like. Little side note, before I start this panel, I had my shape in this last panel too far back, and it wasn't allowing me to line this edge up with this edge. It's supposed to flow all in one line. So I had to section the shape out and take out about this much material in here and re-weld it back in. I think I've got it in the right place now. So I made this template to get me this radius right here, and I'm sure that this should line up with this. And like I mentioned, I think I'm going to go all the way back to this transition point where the upper seat platform rolls down onto the lower seat platform. I'm just going to set this aside for now and concentrate in this area here. You can see that I cleaned the spot welds off, and it looks like this shape right here looks like I need to raise this up just a little bit in this area. Looks like I believe it should plane over onto this area right here. And to get this shape right here, I just cut a little 3/8 wide strip of sheet metal, 18 gauge. And just pushed it down into place to get the, because this panel should follow this contour, and it'll get spot welded right in this area and in this area. So it's important that it lays down flat here and here. And I didn't leave enough material for the flange, so I'm going to write myself a note here. So I remember that the flange goes here. And again, the flange that I'm talking about is right here where it goes vertical and butts up against the outer rocker flange where it eventually gets spot welded. So I took the profile and I marked what I believe to be the center of where the radiuses should be pressed in, and marked both sides. And then I transferred those marks onto this piece of flat stock. The piece of flat stock includes the flange, and I rotate the profile to get the next mark, rotate it to get each mark, and from the flat stock I transferred it over onto another piece of flat stock so that in the event this one works, I'll be able to duplicate it fairly close, and if this one doesn't work, I'll be able to adjust these lines to move the radius to where I think they need to be. And I put a little mark right here on my upper die. First I put ink, and then I used a scratch awl to scratch a finer line. And I also did the same thing on my flat stock. I used a scratch awl and put a finer line so that my tolerance can be a little tighter. I want to lessen this distance a little bit, so I moved this mark this way towards me just a little bit. So I've got this bend right here starting a little sooner than this one, but since I moved this one, I think it'll be okay. But what I'll do is I'll put a reference mark on it so the next one I can reproduce the same way. So here's the fit, and as you can see, this bend, I would like for this to have been a little shallower right here. This bend happened a little sooner than this bend, meaning it's a little further that way, outboard on the car, but that's okay because it gives me a little bit of play this way, side to side, and that will allow me to adjust this to get a better fit against the flange right here. So if I can just duplicate that on a piece about 2 feet long, that'd be great. So this piece seems to work good. So I just need to remember to make this dimension as small as my homemade dies will let me, which means after I put this bend in, I'll put this bend as close to this bend as I can get it. And then as I was bending this one, this original mark right here, I tighten that up and I put this reference point right there. So I transcribe this new mark onto the flat stock right here. So this mark is no good. This mark is the one I'll use. And now I'll transcribe these marks onto the larger piece of stock. And of course I had to make two of them. One for the passenger side and one for the driver's side. I think I duplicated them pretty well. And now I just have to bend this flange up. I'm going to go ahead and cut this radius in, but I'm not going to cut this length right here yet, because this piece needs to be welded in its final position in order to establish this point right here. Right now it looks like this piece needs to slide forward just a little bit. So I'm going to cut the radius but not the length. And then there will be a filler piece to put in here, which will be right in here. Just a small filler piece. Alright, so like I said, I'll trim this later, and then there'll be a filler piece to go in here. And I made the panel long enough so that right here at the back, it's extended on past the seat platform, which ends right about here. So there'll be some kind of a transition to make here. We'll deal with that later. So that's going to be it for this panel for now, and soon I'm going to start welding these pieces in.